Hello everyone, this is John from RPGs and More, and today I'd like to talk to you about a fun book that I've read recently. I'm still working my way through it, but I read the first part of it and I just thought it was so cool I needed to talk about it. And that is The Well. This is, it is a role-playing game by Peter Schaefer. Role-playing game by Peter Schaefer. Now, why this is interesting is because of the setting itself. This is the thing that really grabbed me. It's a very dark fantasy setting, and I really, really like it. It's a little bit of a touch of post-apocalypse, but focuses mainly on kind of the dungeon delving day-to-day stuff. In a way, it is a setting that is designed to have the city and the dungeon be right next to each other and have it make sense to a certain extent. Not to break verisimilitude, shall we say. So, what is the well? The well is a massive structure that exists under the ground somewhere. It is a very tall cylindrical cylindrical thing that goes way down, 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 down. And there is a staircase that goes from level to level to level, spiraling up along the outer portions of this well. And every third turn around it, that's where a new floor is. So there's many new floors around this place. But what's interesting about this is the city Bastion exists inside the well. And the people of Bastion don't have any records or any memory or any songs, nothing about life before the well. They assume that there must have been something, maybe. Actually, no, they don't even assume that. They have no concept of a surface world. This is a world that exists solely within the dungeon. They don't know how tall the well is. They don't know how far down it goes, because all the explorers they've sent up in either direction have either not returned or have turned back without finding anything that resembles the bottom. All right, so that's what this thing is. So what happens is every generation or so, every couple of generations, the city of Bastion moves down a level or two in the well. They do this because their cultural traditions demand that they entomb their dead. And so this is what they do. They carve out these cities from the sides of the well in these doorways that are all magically here for some reason. They don't know why, but they go through these big doorways, these big gates, and then they carve out a fresh city, when the old one gets filled with crypts. Excuse me. Now, this is an interesting aspect of this, because how this ties back into the dungeon is whenever the city moves to a lower level in the well, there are these people known as grave diggers, I believe they're referred to as. Those are kind of your dungeon delvers. And what they do is they go up the well to the previous iterations of the city in order to hunt for treasure. Things that people forgot. Things that were too hard to move at the time for whatever reason when the people left. Sometimes they rob some graves. They're taking the grave goods from previous generations. Sometimes they're going up in search of a family's lost heirloom that the family's willing to pay such and such amount to whoever brings it back first, and there's a bounty on it now. Maybe they're going in search of fugitives that are hiding from the city in the old cities up the well. Maybe they're trying to locate some refugees that were left behind during the last journey, and people want to bring them home. They can have any number of reasons for going up the well. But what takes them there and what they find is kind of where the adventure is. So you've got these previous cities that are absolutely stuffed with crypts. but they're also stuffed with all the normal things you might find in a city. The other thing they're stuffed with is the undead, because there is some sort of curse, some sort of malaise that follows the city of Bastion down the well. And no one really knows what it is or how it started, why it started. There's no understanding of that at all. All they know is that every so often, this malaise causes all the dead that have been entombed in the cities up above to come back as undead creatures. And these undead creatures seek to raid into sometimes the city of Bastion. Right now, they have a massive iron gate that protects them from the areas up the well. So they actually have had several generations of peace in that sense. But anyone who is doing the math knows that they're overdue for another mass migration of their people, which is usually caused by these undead creatures coming down to hunt them. And the undead have been coming, but they keep getting thwarted by the gate and the gatekeepers. All right, so there's undead of all varieties, shapes, sizes. You've got standard ghosts and skeletons. You've got kind of undead constructs of things made out of different bodies, all kind of put together. You've got these like specters and wraiths, and all like skeletal animals. You've got like golems that have been left behind from past cities and have come back to haunt them. Excuse me. All sorts of things. Anything you can imagine. And a few things that frankly I couldn't imagine before, and I love the undead. They are my favorite antagonist when it comes to role-playing games. And I was reading through a lot of this stuff. It was great. So that's part of the evocativeness of this setting. Let's see, I'll show you some of the art we've got. For example, here's one of those undead creatures I'm talking about. A four-armed zombie-like creature that can fight with a sword and a shield, as well as fight with a crossbow or some other weapon. 2 swords, 2 shields, whatever you want to do. Let's get to another creature. Okay, then there is the Tooth Swarm. It is a swarm-like creature that is made up of all the discarded teeth from the previous generations of dead, of this area of the dead, and they've all sprouted wings. Excuse me. And now they swarm and they fly and they nibble at you, basically. And it's this weird concept. It's really kind of cool. So what makes this stand out, aside from just the evocative setting? Well, this is a very grim, dark fantasy setting. Bastion is kind of lost in itself. It is a society that has grown to exist entirely underground. It has no memory of anything before that. It's filled with mushroom farms and places that manufacture the magical paint that they use in order to power their magic, or they also paint it in order to provide light for the city, so that they get they have a light rise and a light set, because after a while the paint wears off, and so that's when night comes. All of these kind of interesting aspects come into this. There's various religions and cults that are based upon how people feel about their place in the society and where the society is going. Some people seem to believe that down at the bottom of the well is paradise, but the well is supposed to be so deep that no one will ever reach it. Well, that's never really explained, and maybe in your game they'll reach the bottom. Maybe they won't. Maybe it will be paradise there at the bottom of the well, or maybe instead it's just going to be the bottom, and the undead keep coming. It um, maybe there is actual more societies down underneath that then you have to get into like the negotiations of, does Bastion talk to these people and try to negotiate room to move past them or to make the next iteration of their city? Don't know. Does the infighting within Bastion end up causing the next incursion of the undead into the city, forcing them to make an emergency evacuation down to the levels below and abandoning their defenses and their gate? Maybe that could be kind of cool. It's a lot of interesting elements that this setting allows for, and there is a game here. There is a game system that has been written for this game and designed specifically for it. I'll be honest, excuse me, not sure why I'm yawning. Anyway, I'm still digesting the game system. I think that it's interesting because it goes off of kind of like a similar to a dice pool idea of, you've got, one or two d6s, and you roll them and you add up what you get from those rolls. And I think that's what you, or do you take the highest? I can't remember. Anyway, but you can also do a thing called a gambit, and that is, you kind of say, hey, I'm going to take that third die, and if I succeed, then it's great. But if I don't, or if this die rolls badly, then this bad thing is going to happen to me, like I'm out of arrows or my bowstring breaks, or you agree with the GM about what the failure will be, and then if the GM agrees, then you get your gambit and you get your extra die to see if you succeed. I kind of like that as an idea. I'm not sold on it necessarily, but it's worth percolating because I like the idea of giving people rerolls. I've kind of been using inspiration in a sense, where people can kind of bank their inspiration, bank their hero points, and use those to pay for rerolls when they want them. But one of the things that I've discovered in the game that I'm running right now is that some people love to hold on to those a lot longer than I expected that they would. And it can make for some interesting and funny, but ultimately unbalanced situations where, one person's always failing, and then the other person is, there's no way that they can fail a roll because they've got 10 inspiration banked, and they're just going to keep rolling until they get a success. So I kind of like the idea of keeping the rerolls, but having them behind a gate of, you can have this, but if it doesn't work, then we are agreeing, player and game master are agreeing that this bad thing will happen. It's interesting. It reminds me a bit of the GM intrusions of Cypher's system, but there's a lot more storytelling in this version than there is in the GM intrusion, because the GM intrusion, the GM basically says, pardon the intrusion, and the player has to decide, without knowing what the consequences might be, whether or not they'll take it or buy it off. And then they find out later, after they decide, if they decide to buy it off, they never know what the intrusion might have been. If they take it, then then they find out. And I generally prefer Cypher's way of doing it. But this is another interesting idea, and I'm not against it. So, but how would I do this? Like right now, I can see using, say, Swords and Wizardry White Box to run this. And I think that would work really well, because it's very basic. It gives the opportunity for, clerics, for magic users and things like that. But it doesn't have so much of the superhero feeling that some versions of Dungeons and Dragons have, in order to allow the players to kind of enjoy that grim, dark feeling. Another system that it could work for, you could do it with the Cypher system. The Cypher system tends a little bit more towards the heroic. It's a little harder to make Cypher do grim and gritty, but it could work. It could work. I think I could make it work. But I think at its heart, because it is reliant on the dungeon, and because the emphasis of the game is on resource management, that's the other thing about this game, is you have to track your light. You must track your torches and other things, not only in the game system, but also in the setting itself, because light is life. And if you lose your light, then you're in trouble, because there is no sun or moon to guide you. There is just the dark, and it is very easy to walk off a ledge. So tracking your gear becomes important, and I kind of like that. I don't know what it is about me. As I get older, I really kind of start to understand a bit more the resource management aspect of some role-playing games, and I find that more entertaining. So one of the reasons why I've gotten back into the game BattleTech, and not the Alpha Strike version, which is the quick and fast, let's play a game in under 2 hours version, but I've really kind of dug into the older classic version, not older, but the classic version of the game, where a 2-hour game is what you play when you have, 3 to 4 mechs on each side, and you're filling out those record sheets, and it's a slow moving game, but I'm kind of enjoying that. I'm digging it, and I think in a sense that's how I feel about RPGs right now. Is I feel like I'm really enjoying tracking time, tracking encumbrance, tracking food and water, turning it into a survival game, because there is no guarantee that there's going to be food around the next corner. I'm really kind of enjoying that aspect of reading up on original Dungeons and Dragons and Bandit's Keep. I've been kind of following their recent solo play on their actual play channel, and that's been really cool for me. So I think that's why The Well speaks to me, because it's a very evocative, undead focused setting, dark fantasy setting, can be very grim, that also focuses on resource management. There are no heroes, but there's a lot of room for heroics. So that's kind of what I like about it. Anyway, I think I've rambled on enough. I paid for this game. This is not that I'd received no compensation for this. There's no affiliation. I'll see if I can put a link in the description. It will not be an affiliated link, just me providing access to what I've been talking about. If you enjoy this sort of thing, if you want to, learn more about books and systems that I've read that I think are kind of cool, please go ahead and like the video, leave a subscribe. And yeah, I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you so much. Peace be with you. Bye-bye.